All right, we will continue on with Mississippi State head coach Joe Moorhead. Coach, we'll ask you to give us a brief opening comment, and then we'll open it for Q&A. Again, as a reminder, if you'll raise your hand, we'll get you a microphone for questions.
No, very excited to be here. Certainly a little bit different than Patriot League Media Day 3 years ago at Green Pond Country Club in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, in scope and stature. Appreciate the coverage you all provide to our team and to our conference. I think that's something that makes it special, not just the players, not just the coaches, but how important it is to everybody following the teams. So very excited to be here, and I'll take any questions that you have.
We'll go down here on the front row to the right.
I know you've been asked a million times about the difference between the North and the South, so I'm going to ask you, what's the biggest difference between the Big Ten and the SEC?
I think that's yet to be determined because I haven't gone through a season here yet. But, certainly when you're talking about that level of football, we're recruiting and playing with the best of the best in the country, and, teams from the, Big Ten and the SEC, invariably end up in the college football playoff. I think it's really kind of out of the frying pan and into the fire that I think it's, was a great proving ground, and certainly, my time and experience in the Big Ten will be one that has prepared me well for the rigors of the SEC.
Go to the left side on the back row on the aisle.
What's it like to get to know a new group of players? Obviously, you've made other stops along the way, but to get to know these players, get to know about them as people, what's that been like since you arrived in Starkville?
I think that's been the most exciting part about leaving the assistant coaching chair at Penn State and getting back into a role as a head coach as I was at Fordham University, where you're inheriting a group of guys who had been with a certain coach for an extended period of time, and you're bringing in a new staff, new ideas, a new culture, new schemes, and certainly trying to earn the players' respect, because I don't think that's something that could be given. I think it's something that needs to be earned, and I think as the days progress since the time we've been there until now, that the players are really embracing our idea that that our culture is what's going to be the thing that differentiates us. Discipline, accountability, work ethic, attention to detail, and selflessness. So I think that's a very neat thing as a head coach, where as an assistant you're responsible for your position, you're responsible for your side of the ball as a coordinator, but as a head coach you're able to kind of be able to be a part of every facet of the program.
We'll go over to the left side, standing in the back.
Good morning, Coach. How are you?
Great. How you doing?
I'm good. Rachel Barbeau, Sirius XM, ESPNU. A lot has been made about your defensive line, and so much is line of scrimmage plays, trench play.
Yeah.
I'm curious about your offensive and defensive lines, what you've seen in spring, and does that excite you for the fall?
Absolutely. I was joking around a little bit earlier with my history as an offensive coach and a play caller with this defense. I may switch over and call the defense this year. But no, certainly when you look at guys like Montez and Jeffrey, and we're not just two deep, but in some places three deep on our defensive line, and Coach Baker does an unbelievable job with those guys. And when you have a unit like that that can stop the run and pressure the passer, it alleviates some of the stress on the back end. So very, very excited about our defense. And you look at our offensive line, and Mississippi State's had a history of running the ball successfully. And with our offensive scheme, we operate at our best when we're running the ball well, because I think that opens up things in the pass game. And Coach Marcus Johnson's doing a great job with the O-line. And much like our defensive line, big, fast, physical, aggressive. And to watch those two units go against each other in practice, I really think it's preparing us for what we're going to see on a weekly basis in the SEC.
Just a second question. Would you say you're going to run first?
This is not we strive to be 50-50, and if you go back to, probably not when I was at UConn, we were a lot more run heavy there, but from my time at Fordham until now, we've been just about, we've never been higher than 55% one way or the other, and I think, where we gravitate towards will be what we do better, but I think we have to run the ball well in order to force people to commit numbers to the box by support or by pressure. And when we do that, it creates one-on-one matchups on the back end. And I think from the past 2 years, you've seen our willingness and ability, kind of to exploit those one-on-one matchups.
We'll go over to the right side on the back row, right in the middle.
Coach, you're inheriting arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, in Nick Fitzgerald. How's the transition easier with a quarterback that's experienced like him?
No, it makes it easier in the sense that he's been through it. It's not a guy where you're coming in and particularly in this conference where he's battle tested, and with our offense and the level of autonomy and decision making that's required of the quarterback position, we want in our system a guy that can beat you with his brains, beat you with his legs, and beat you with his arms. And I think Nick combines that total package. And when you add decision-making to that and how I believe he's going to improve as a passer in our system, he's certainly a guy that we're placing high expectations on for the season, and I think he has those for himself. So I think you're going to see his best season yet.
Go over to the left side on the front row, all the way to the end.
You've got a pretty established track record of developing offensive skill players. Has that maybe been of a heightened focus given, some of the other position groups are a little more proven?
I think it's probably been a bit more of a focus relative to our development of the pass game and our reliance on that to be successful, particularly as it pertains to explosive plays. And I think probably the question that you're asking is us being a little bit more unproven at the wide receiver position. And I think that's something where, we had a group of guys there and we're looking for a couple to separate themselves from the pack. And I think they all had a very good spring. But as we head into fall camp, and now it's just not knowing what to do, but the hows and the whys, and looking for a couple guys out of that group to really step up and separate themselves. Because I think the talent is there. We just need to continue to coach them, and Coach Getsy's doing an excellent job there, and give him an opportunity to make plays.
Go to the camera platform right in the middle.
Coach, you're entering a division with some pretty heavy hitters, the SEC West. Do you have any preconceived notions of the SEC West specifically, and what do you think you need to do to be successful in the SEC in general?
No, I think certainly you look at it from a quantifiable objective measure that the two teams that played in the national championship were an SEC West team and an SEC East team. So certainly until somebody's capable of, knocking Alabama off, they're the standard bearer. And not just Alabama, but you go down the SEC West on a weekly basis, and even our crossover games that, much like the Big Ten, and talked about out there a little bit, that the margin of error is razor thin. And, at Penn State last year, we were 4 points away from being undefeated. Lost to Ohio State by 1 and lost to Michigan State by 3. And in a conference like this, you have to be on top of it every single week if you want to have an opportunity, to be back in Atlanta in December and certainly continuing your season beyond that.
Go over here to the left side on the back row, all the way to the left.
Hey, Joe, over here.
Oh, there you go.
As a distant outsider up in the Northeast, what was your understanding of the identity of Mississippi State while you were at other jobs? And then just also, could you update us on your search for some legitimate Italian food in the South?
The perception of Mississippi State, you kind of, unfortunately during the course of the season, you're so myopic in the sense that you're focused on, your job and what your team's doing. You really don't get to watch a bunch of football, but outside of your conference or on TV for that matter. But, Mississippi State, is a team that, Coach Mullen did an excellent job developing the foundation, a team that was hung its hat on its physicality on both sides of the ball and ability to run the ball. And really what myself and my staff and this team, what we're looking to do is kind of shed that underdog role where you come into a day like this and Mississippi State is picked 5th or 6th and then they end up 4th and, people are fired up about it. I want to elevate this program from good to great. So when we come into days like this, people are talking about Mississippi State as a legitimate contender for the conference championship. And, those are things that, on a daily basis, our kids understand that we're operating at a championship standard.
Go to the camera platform, far right in the back.
Hey, Joe, going off of that, when you first came to Starkville, you'd mentioned that you don't want your players.
Excuse me for 1 second. New Italian restaurant opening, Gondolier. That'll be a good one in Starkville. So scheduled to hit that tonight with the family.
A very important answer to the very important question.
Yes, sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt.
No worries. So going off of what you were just talking about, when you came to Starkville, you wanted your players to not be afraid to talk about conference championships and national championships as their goals. Do you like having that obviously high expectations this year for this team, but do you want your teams to embrace those expectations every year?
Absolutely, I want us to talk about it, and I think that's part of the attraction. And why I think Mr. Cohen brought me here is to elevate the program from good to great. And if you're not talking about it, and if attitude truly reflects leadership, it's got to come from the top. So from myself, from our coordinators, from our assistant coaches, I want our kids to believe that the 3 things that I think are necessary to win a championship, and I've been fortunate enough at the last 4 places I've been to win a conference championship, are talent, coaching, and culture. And I believe we have the requisite talent on our team to compete on a weekly basis in this conference. I believe we put a coaching staff in position that are experts at fundamentals and technique that can motivate our guys and can put them in a position to be successful with our scheme. And lastly, I think the most important part is the cultural aspect that, we got to do the little things better. And you talk about someone in our conference, you hear Coach Saban talk about the process and doing all those little things on a weekly basis where you make the investment and earn the right. And I think that's what we've got to do. And, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, we talk about championships and we want to win the SEC and we don't get there. Well, we haven't had a winning record in the SEC one time in the last 15 years. We don't have the Egg Bowl trophy. And if we have a season that's reflective of what it's been in the recent and past history, then we're going to be competitive and go to a good bowl game. But I don't think there's any harm in us talking about wanting to and our capability to win a championship, or else I shouldn't be here. I should have stayed at Penn State.
Go back here on the left side, standing.
Coach, what are your right here?
Oh,
Yeah, here you go.
sorry.
Coach, what are your expectations for
Directionally challenged.
I understand. What are your expectations for defensive tackle Jafari Simmons coming into the season? He's got a lot of attention as possible Outland Trophy candidate. And what are your expectations for your defensive line as a whole?
Our defensive line as a whole, a term that you use when you're scouting other teams, as you refer to them as game wreckers, that guys can single-handedly take a game over, and you kind of highlight those guys when you're at the beginning of the week and talking about it. And I think Jeffrey and Montez and a couple other guys on our defensive line have the capability to single-handedly wreck a game for the opposition. And just to reiterate the job that Coach Baker does with those guys, 19 years of professional experience, and we're certainly excited to have players of their caliber that once again, not to be redundant, but in a line of scrimmage football league, they really give you an opportunity to be special.
Go over here on the right side, front row.
When I look at the defense, the cornerback position is the one where I don't feel like I could pencil in a starter. How do you feel about the guys you have competing for that spot?
We have a group of guys right now that I think we feel very solid about, and kind of like the receiver position, probably with a little bit more experience and a little bit more production. Cam Dancer's a young guy who did a lot of good things during spring ball. Chris Rayford's an older guy that's had some experience, and certainly Jamal Peters, a 6-foot-plus guy, right around 200 pounds. That's very fast and very physical. Some younger guys behind them. So, and then you feel a little bit better at the safety spot, just in terms of the experience level with Mark and with Jonathan Abram. So I think what we have is a couple of guys who are fighting for the spot, who have some game experience and a lot of talent, and then behind them some younger guys that we're looking to develop to kind of fill in the 2 deep.
Go over here on the left side in the back, standing.
Hey, Coach. So this is a non-football question. So you come to the South. When was like the first time somebody said something, ate something, suggested something where you thought to yourself internally, what did they just say? Like, what did they just offer me? Like, this is nuts, these Southern people.
Yeah, I as a graduate of Fordham University and being an English major, what I feel is a somewhat reputable academic institution, I found that the language was the thing that stuck out to me. That a group of people is you guys, and here it's y'all. It's not, and if it's 3 or more, it's all y'all. Yeah. All right, and then you're not going to, you're fixing to do something. So the language was the first thing, and then certainly the willingness and ability to fry anything and wrap it in bacon from a food standpoint has been something that's really stood out to me in a positive manner. So, and the humidity, that'll get you too.
Yeah.
Go over here to the right side on the back row, right on the aisle.
Hey, Coach, a couple of quick questions for you.
Yes, sir.
Mark Hudspeth, the addition to your staff, what does he bring to your staff?
In the composition of our assistant coaching staff, we made a concerted effort to have a mix of guys from the north, a mix of guys from the south, a mix of guys who had experience recruiting different areas, because we want to recruit nationally. And certainly what Mark brings to the table, native of Louisville, Mississippi, which is relatively a half hour from our campus, had coached at Mississippi State before, had coached in the SEC, and certainly his head coaching experience, ULL, all those things combined made him a very kind of a no-brainer to bring into the staff, and he's done a phenomenal job for us.
What role has Thrill Will Martin done getting you ready for the season here?
Bill Martin? Oh, he's the best in the business. He's my boss. I follow him around. He tells me what to do. Keeps me on track.
We'll go right over here on the second row.
Coach, 2 of the toughest teams on your conference schedule this year arguably are going to be the Alabama schools,
Yep.
Auburn and Alabama. What do you feel like is the key for your team to go in there and get those victories?
To be honest with you, those games are so far down the road right now. In my context of viewing them has been the games from last year. So, and not to sound cliche, but I'll be cliche. You know, our focus is on Stephen. Well, actually, our focus is on camp, on what we need to do to mow our own grass and make sure that we understand what we're doing in all three phases. And then from there, we'll carry it on to Stephen F. Austin for our first game. But I think the biggest thing for us to have the opportunity to compete against teams of, Alabama and Auburn's caliber is to not worry about who we're playing, but to worry about what we compete against. So, the term that we use, championship standard, that we don't compete against an opponent, we compete against a standard. And it's not like you say, well, we're playing Alabama this week, so we really have to ramp up how well we prepare and how hard we play, or are we playing this team this week? We necessarily don't have to, go as hard. That if we kind of, draw that line in the sand and say, hey, this is what we need to do to be the best team that we can be to give us an opportunity to compete on a weekly basis. We take care of the little things, and we continue to progress mentally and physically. And certainly in those games, you can't beat yourself. And, one of our goals in spring ball and something we focused on and we're going to continue to do in camp is dominating situational football, specifically as it pertains to explosive play margin and turnover margin. And I think in games of that, where 5 or 6 plays may determine the outcome, you have to win the explosive play battle and you have to win the turnover battle. That'll give us a chance to compete against teams of that caliber.
We'll go standing all the way over here to the left.
Hey, Coach. Bruce Marshall, Sports Byline USA. Another schedule question. No disrespect to Steve F. Austin and Coach Conk, but you've got several weeks to prepare here. And the schedule, Kansas State, that might be the biggest game in the country in week 2. I mean, they're open with South Dakota on their side, but are you going to do anything a little extra to get ready for Kansas State as you ramp up to the opener?
There may be a few things during the course of fall camp where we get to the tail end of it, where we have a period or two where we concentrate on our first or second opponent. But as I mentioned before, we have so many things to clean up on our end, and teach our scheme to our guys and make sure they understand it. And talk about the 3 things for us to be successful on a weekly basis. We hang our hat on preparation, effort and execution, how well we prepare Sunday to Friday, how hard we play on every given play. And then the last one is the most important, the execution aspect of it, and the precision and the attention to detail. And against a team, like Kansas State and Coach Snyder being a legend and an icon, they're a team that does the little things right. They don't beat themselves. So we really got to go into that game and understand their style of offense, that they limit possessions, that they play very, physical, fundamentally sound defense. And, I think, going out there, 11:30 kickoff, that's going to be a huge challenge in week 2. One we look forward to, though.
We'll go over here right down the middle on the left side on the aisle.
Coach, back to your staff, really looks like there's an impressive amount of NFL experience. With Terrell Buckley, what's it like to have a player with his accomplishments on the staff, as well as what's it like to work with Larry Coyer?
Coach Coyer, actually, I GA'd for him at the University of Pittsburgh. That was actually my second year in coaching. So, being an offensive guy your whole life, being a quarterback, and being on that side of the ball, you think you understand what's happening on the other side until you have a chance to coach on that side of the ball. So, the things I learned from Coach, and for him to be able to come in here in an analyst role and kind of, share his 40 years worth of experience, being a coordinator at a bunch of different major college football programs and coordinating in the NFL and being in the Super Bowl. I think that's something where Coach Shoup, can really glean a lot of information from Coach from a schematic standpoint, and then having guys like Coach Buckley who've done it at the highest level in college and the NFL, and Coach Getsy, who I coached at Akron, he had a cup of coffee with the Niners, so he's a guy that's got a little bit of pro experience. And Marcus Johnson, coaching our O-line, played 6 years for the Vikings. So anytime, what I think it does, it validates it to the kids that, you don't necessarily have to have played at the college level or pro level, to be a successful coach, but I think that's something that certainly helps.
Go over here to the left side on the back row.
Sir.
Good morning, Coach.
Good morning.
Coach, what areas would you like to see improvement from Nick Fitzgerald?
I would say, the thing that we've kind of, earmarked to see the highest level of improvement and progression, is his development as a passer and his completion percentage. Nick's, right around a 55% career completion percentage guy, and kind of our standard in this offensive system going back is, the 65% mark. So, Nick, getting pre-snap tips, getting post-snap confirmation, the ability to read coverages and not just know where to go with the ball, but why, and not just doing that, but doing it on proper footwork with good mechanics. I think, you know, developing him as a kind of drop back and play action down the field passer, and improving his understanding of coverages, and, you know, ramping that completion percentage up. That's where we'd like to see the most growth.
All right, got time for a few more. We'll go to the camera position over here on the right side.
Hey, Coach, this is not a trick question. This is another one of those. You're now in the South. And,
Right.
There trend to be maybe a car dynamic in the South. I don't know if you're a car guy yourself. When you were 16 years old, what was your dream car?
16 years old. We bought my daughter's 17. We bought her a Jeep, so there seems to be a good Jeep contingency in the South. And my middle guy, he's just got his permit. We got him a used Mustang, so you see a good amount of those. But you know, my dream car, not just from 16, but until now, because I still don't have it. You know, I'd like at some point in my life to get a BMW. Don't own one of those, but you know, somewhere down the line, maybe, you know, we'll splurge and buy one of those.
Go to the camera position over here on the left side.
It's the ultimate driving machine. That's what they say.
Coach, almost to your left a little bit in the cameras here.
Yep.
Nick said that your offensive approach was a little bit fresh, you know, maybe some different ideas. Obviously, having an outsider's perspective, is there something that you've seen in your offense that you feel will be successful against these rigorous SEC defenses?
You know, going through the film and watching them, and certainly, you know, the speed, the athleticism, you know, the physicality of the defenses in this league are tremendous, and, you know, probably not unlike Ohio State, not unlike Michigan, and some of the things that we saw on a weekly basis, you know, in the Big Ten. But I think the thing that allows us to be successful offensively is the simplicity of what we teach to our kids, and teaching it in a conceptual manner where it's not necessarily hard for them to learn or difficult for them to execute, but it presents itself as a little bit more complex to a defense. And I think our ability to both run the ball and pass the ball with success, you know, will give us an opportunity, because in this league, if you just run the ball or you just pass the ball, you know, the pass rush and the coverage is too good just to hang your hat on one of those.
Final question, standing over here in the back on the right side.
You weren't here when Nick got injured, obviously, but what's impressed you the most about his rehab process? And then just, like, it sounds like he's been making some of the other assistants watch the video. Has he made you watch it at all?
He is not. I was Thanksgiving Day, and I was running out to get my son a birthday gift at Target, so I missed the play on TV. But, you know, I've seen it, and he hasn't tried to force me. I know he's tried to make Coach Bryner watch it. But I think the thing with Nick's recovery, and you know, Thomas Callens, our head trainer, and his staff have done a phenomenal job, that he's really, it's kind of been representative of his mindset as a whole, that he's kind of turned it into a competitive thing. You know, how quickly can I get healthy without, you know, setting myself back? And there were times during the course of spring ball, you know, where he's in 7-on-7 and people were covered, and he tucks it and starts to run, and you're like, well, maybe we should put him in team drills, but understanding, you know, you don't want to get out too far in front of your skis. But, you know, he's really attacked it on a daily basis, and our medical staff and our strength staff have been very impressed with his approach.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you, guys.